I've always considered myself a person who doesn't believe in enchanted places. Even when friends at school whispered about the woods behind the old railway line, where people supposedly disappeared, it seemed to me that these were just horror stories. But everything changed when I found the diary in a paper bag by the side of the road. He was lying in the mud, pinned down by a stone, as if he had been deliberately left for someone to pick up. The pages were wrinkled from moisture, and the handwriting trembled, as if the writer was afraid of his own thoughts. The first record was dated 1998. A man named Tom wrote about getting lost in the woods while hiking with friends. They argued about where to go until they split up. His last lines sounded like a deathbed confession. They didn't scream. I only heard footsteps. A lot of steps. But when I turned around, there was no one. And then the earth sighed. Then there were only incoherent scribbles. This diary has become an obsession. I started collecting stories about the missing in those parts. The bartender at the diner by the highway, an old man with a face lined like bark, told how his brother, a hunter, once returned home unconscious. He was found by a stream, clutching a branch with human hair in his hand. The doctors talked about mental confusion, but my brother kept repeating until his death, "They don't want us to leave." A month later, I was standing on the edge of that very forest. In the backpack, there is a map, a flashlight, a voice recorder, and a pistol, which I bought in case of wild animals. But the animals didn't scare me. The silence scared me. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The trees grew too close to each other, their roots intertwined like veins. Every step echoed, as if someone was repeating my movements underground. On the second day, I came across a hut. The walls were askew, the windows boarded up, but the interior smelled of fresh wood. Someone recently repaired it. There were empty cans on the floor, and the words, "Do not light a fire at night," were written in charcoal on the wall. I ignored the warning. When it got dark, I lit a campfire and turned on the recorder to record the sounds of the forest. An hour later, I heard the first scream. It came from far away, sharp and piercing, as if the man was screaming and crying at the same time. I grabbed a flashlight and a pistol, but as soon as I took a step into the darkness, the scream stopped. And then something started that couldn't be explained. The ground shook underfoot, and the trees stirred, even though there was no wind. The headphones on the recorder, which I had forgotten to turn off, hissed as if the tape was filled with white noise. And in that hiss, I could make out a voice. "Go away. They can hear you." I started to run, but the path had disappeared. Instead, there was a wall of fir trees, their roots arching like snakes. The lantern flickered and went out. In total darkness, I fell. My hand bumped into something soft. It was a man, or what's left of it. The skin stretched over the bones, the eyes were missing, but the fingers were still clutching the notebook. On the first page it was written, "They are not human. They're what's left when people break down." I don't remember how I got out. I woke up next to the road in the morning with a notebook and a cassette in my hands. They told me at the police station that no one had been missing in the woods for 10 years. But when I put the tape in the tape recorder, it wasn't my recordings. 3 months have passed since then. I'm back in the city, but the forest won't let me go. At night, I hear footsteps outside the door. Not hurried, not slow, but measured, as if someone was following my trail. The police found no hut, no body, no records. But I know they're there. Sometimes when I open my notebook, new inscriptions appear between the lines. "They come for those who know," reads the last one. Yesterday, I went to the forest again. Not out of curiosity, but because of the sounds. The phone picks up strange interference, as if the signal is being blocked. But when I played the tape through the speakers of the car, the forest responded. The trees swayed, although the air was still, and in the distance there was a howl. Not a wolf, not a human. It was as if something huge, consisting of thousands of voices, was shouting in unison. I'm not coming back. Not because I'm afraid, because I feel like they're already here. Yesterday, in the bathroom mirror, I noticed a shadow behind my back. She wasn't reflected in the glass. She just stood there, and her outline resembled a tangle of roots. And this morning, a neighbor from the third floor asked why I no longer go to work. I hadn't seen her for a week, but she was smiling and her teeth were in the ground. The neighbor with the dirt on her teeth disappeared. Or rather, it was taken out. The next morning, I heard paramedics in black gloves loading a stretcher covered with a sheet into the car. The tip of her finger was sticking out. The nail was broken off. There was dirt under it. I wanted to go downstairs and ask what happened, but I bumped into a man in a dark raincoat at the door. He didn't introduce himself, just shoved a summons into my hands. You are required to report to the Department of Internal Affairs tomorrow at 8 o'clock. The signature is illegible, like the roots of those trees. The station smelled of cheap coffee and fear. The investigator, a plump man with a face like wet clay, placed a folder in front of me. There were photos inside. My car is at the edge of the forest. I'm sleeping in an armchair with a notebook on my lap. Even the shots from my bathroom, where the mirror reflects only an empty room. You're under surveillance, Mr. Kelly, he said, not looking at me. You have been watched since your visit to the forest. But not us. He turned on the recorder. It made a noise, like that night at the campfire. Then there was a creaking sound, as if someone was dragging something heavy on gravel. And the voice. My voice, but distorted, as if it were speaking from underwater. They're here. They've always been here. The investigator turned off the recording. Isn't that you? He asked. I was silent. Then he threw a key on the table. You'd better leave, or at least stop going into the woods. I didn't listen. It started raining again at night, big drops hitting the glass like fingers. I was sitting in the kitchen, rereading my notebook. New entries appeared on the page that I definitely left blank. They are building something. Underground. Below is a diagram. Circles, intersecting lines, crosses in the center. It looks like tunnels. Or graves. There was a knock on the door. A woman in a wet raincoat stood in the doorway. Her hair was plastered to her face, and her eyes glittered like an animal's in the headlights. Are you looking for the truth? What is it? She asked without waiting for an invitation to enter. Then listen up. The forest is not a place. It's a trap. Those who have disappeared, their bodies are just shells. What's inside them stays there to wait for the next ones. She threw a flash drive on the table. Your trip to the police station. What the cameras didn't show. The flash drive contained a video. I was leaving the building, and a shadow was following me. Not mine. She moved unnaturally, as if her limbs were folded in the opposite direction. But the worst part was that I recognized that gait. Tom from a diary walked in the same way, jerkily, as if his feet were rooted to the ground. The woman disappeared, leaving the smell of wet earth. I couldn't find her in the database, and she wasn't listed among the city's residents either. But the next day, I read in the newspaper, the body of an unknown woman was found by the river. The cause of death was exposure to water for many years. Photos of her face were not published. I am currently writing this in the basement of a library in the archival documents department. I found a map of the area from 1947. The forest was half the size then, and in place of the hut is a cross. There is an inscription next to it. The remains of 12 workers who died during the construction of the railway line are buried here. The cause of death has not been determined. But that's not the worst part. The scariest thing is that I can smell the earth. Not just dampness, the one from the grave. And it comes from my hands. The smell of earth became stronger. Not like after the rain, not like in the woods. It's like being in a crypt. I scratched my skin with my nails until it bled, but it didn't disappear. At work, my colleagues shied away when I passed by. It's like you came out of the grave, Martha, the secretary, said, and didn't look into his eyes anymore. I started wearing gloves, but even under them, my palms itched as if maggots were moving under my skin. I found photos from 1947 in the archive. Workers on the background of an unfinished railway. Their faces are ash gray. They're all wearing the same overalls, and they're all looking at the camera, except for one. He stands to the side, his face blurred, as if he was moving during the shooting. And on his chest is a badge with the name Tom. An old man came in the evening. I didn't hear him enter the apartment. I just opened my eyes, and he was sitting in an armchair, holding my notes in his hands. "Are you looking for answers?" "What is it?" he asked, not looking at me. "What if the answer is you?" His voice sounded like the creak of unoiled gears. Those who built the road saw something in the ground, something that made them dig deeper. But they didn't realize that they were digging inwards, not downwards. He got up, and I noticed that his shoes were dry, even though it was raining outside. They're still digging. Through those who come. The old man was gone in the morning. Only on the table there was a medallion with the inscription, 12. Inside is a photo of a woman with a face similar to the one who came earlier. On the back is an inscription, "They don't die. They're coming back." I went to the river, where they found the body of an unknown woman. The shore was empty, except for the police tape fluttering in the wind. I found a hole under the rocks by the water. Not fresh, its edges are overgrown with moss. Inside were bones intertwined with roots. And among them is my notebook, the pages of which were covered with my handwriting, but dated 1947. I returned home in the rain. In the hallway mirror, I saw that my hair had turned gray. They didn't turn gray, as if they were covered with ashes. And black dots appeared on his forehead, like seeds embedded in his skin. The doorbell rang at night. I didn't open it, but there was a newspaper on the mat this morning. An article about strange finds in the forest. The remains of a man who disappeared in 1947 were discovered 2 miles from the railway. There are no signs of violent death, but the body has been preserved too well. I stopped recognizing my reflection. Not immediately, but first the little things. The eyebrow is raised higher than usual. The lip crease is deeper. Then the hands. The skin on his fingers became rough, like bark, and his nails darkened, like those of a corpse that had lain in water for a long time. I bought gloves, but they were tearing, clinging to something inside me as if thorns were growing under my skin. In the library, the archivist, a gaunt man with a face like parchment, whispered to me, "You are not the first to seek the truth about the forest. The previous researcher left a diary. Would you like to?" He held out a battered notebook. The date on the first page was yesterday. Last entry, "They're changing you." Not externally, but internally. First the itching, then the voices. Then you realize that you haven't eaten in a long time, and you don't want to. I ran out, but I burned the notebook in the sink. The paper burned with a green flame, and the ashes gathered in a pattern similar to a forest map. The plumber came in at night. I didn't call him, but he knocked on the door, saying that the neighbor downstairs was complaining about a leak. The apartment was dry, but I let him in. He examined the pipes, muttering, "Old houses, they have roots in them." Then he froze, looking at my hands. "Have you been to the doctor for a long time?" he asked. I didn't answer. He left, but left the wrench on the table. There were scratches on the metal, as if someone had tried to saw through it with their nails. In the morning, I discovered in the bathroom that the tap water was flowing black. Not dirty, but dark like oil. She didn't get her hands dirty, but she left a smell of decay. When I drained it, there was a film left in the sink that looked like shed skin. In the evening, my mother called. Her voice was trembling. "Uncle Ed is my father's brother, who disappeared in that forest 30 years ago. He came today," she said. "He hasn't changed at all. Just the eyes like a dead man's." I went to see her. The house was empty. The mother was lying on the kitchen floor, her face covered with the same black film that remained in the sink. Uncle Ed was standing next to her. His skin was gray like an old tree, and his fingers ended in claws. "You knew we were coming," he croaked. "You felt the ground." I was running. The car wouldn't start, but when I hit the steering wheel with my fist, the engine came to life with a roar like the howl of an animal. In the rear-view mirror, Uncle Ed was standing on the road, waving his arms like branches in the wind. Now I'm in a motel on the outskirts of town. The walls are thin here, and you can hear your neighbor pacing back and forth all night. His footsteps are heavy and wet. Sometimes he stops at my door. I know it's not human. Not because I believe in evil spirits. Because I saw his footprints in the hallway. Dirt mixed with something dark, and handprints with 6 fingers. The The motel smells of rust and old carpet. I'm sitting on the bed with my back against the wall, counting the steps outside the door. Step, pause, step. It's like someone is dragging something heavy. Sometimes there is a slurping sound as if the soles stick to the floor. In the morning, the tracks disappeared. There are only worn streaks on the carpet in the hallway, as if they were wiped off with a wet cloth. But there was a clump of hair stuck in the vent above the door, dark with earth at the tips. I went out into the city. People shied away as if from a leper. Even the homeless man at the station who usually asks for change was groping on the ground with a stick without looking up. "You're not one of ours," he muttered. His feet were bare, and there were clumps of black dirt between his toes. At the hospital, doctors found nothing but stress. But the nurse who was giving the injection dropped the syringe. "I'm sorry," she whispered, looking at my hand. "I thought you moved." Her pupils dilated, like someone who sees something behind my back. He did not return home. I took a room in another motel under an assumed name. The doorbell rang at night. I didn't open it, but I found a note under the crack. "We know where you sleep." The letters are cut out of newspapers like in old kidnapping stories. In the morning, in the bathroom, I discovered that my teeth were loose. They don't hurt, they just sway like rotten pillars. When I tried to pull one out, a black liquid flowed out of the gum, similar to the one in the sink. There were stains on the mirror that could not be washed off with water. The maid came in the evening. She knocked, demanding to get out. I was silent. Then she came in by herself. Her face resembled a wax mask, smooth, without a single wrinkle. "You have to leave," she said, without moving her lips. "They can smell it." She had the key to my room in her hand. Not a plastic card, but an old iron key with the number 12. I ran out the window. The car was parked in the parking lot, but the engine wouldn't start. Then I went on foot. On the way, I saw a phone booth. The glass was cracked, but the tube was working. I dialed 911, but instead of beeping, I heard a whisper. "Soon. Very soon." Now I'm on the bus. Next to it is an old woman with a basket full of earth. She smiles, showing gums without teeth. "You smell like them," she says. Her nails are long and dirty, and there are pieces of my skin under them. The bus stopped at an empty station. The people went out, but the old woman with the basket of earth remained. "You're not leaving here," she said, and I realized the bus wasn't going anywhere. We were standing in place all the time, and the landscape outside the window, the forest, the road, the river, was painted on the screen. The driver, his face hidden under his cap, handed me the ticket. It read, "Final stop, the 12th mile." I went out. There's that forest all around. The trees were moving, though there was no wind. The roots crawled out of the ground like veins pulsing under the skin. I followed a path that I couldn't see, but I could feel it under my feet. My skin turned gray, and my nails fell off, revealing black claws. The ground beneath me was sighing. There was a hut at the edge of the clearing. The boards on the windows were rotten, and the interior smelled of fresh blood. On the table is my diary, filled to the last page. Last entry. I found them. They are me. There was a skeleton in the corner. His bones were intertwined with the roots, and mushrooms grew in his eye sockets. Next to it is a medallion with the number 12. I put it around my neck, and at the same moment the ground parted. Beneath it was a network of tunnels dug into the flesh. The walls breathed, contracting like muscles. "You've come," the voices whispered. There were 12 of them. Men, women, old people, all with my face. They held out their hands, and I could see their skin melting, exposing the tree bark underneath. "We've been waiting for you," they said. "You're the last one." I didn't resist. When their fingers touched my skin, I felt my body disintegrate into fibers as bones turn into roots. It didn't hurt, just silence, sweet as the earth after the rain. I'm here now. Down below, we weave threads that reach to the surface, to new victims. We are a trap that feeds on fear. We are what remains when people break down. Sometimes I hear footsteps overhead. Someone screams, but it doesn't matter. It's important that the next one is already underway. He can smell it. He's looking for the truth. And you, those who are reading this, how will you feel when the ground beneath your feet sighs in response? A question for the audience. We believe that horror hides in the dark, but what if it grows inside us, slowly like roots underground? Are we able to distinguish our own madness from reality, or are they the same thing? And if evil is not a force, but a void that we fill with our fears, will the forest ever become full?